With wildfires ravaging California, hurricanes hitting North Carolina, and other natural disasters affecting various states, the U.S. is no stranger to these devastating effects of extreme weather and disasters. Tornadoes, floods, hurricanes, fires, these disasters are wreaking havoc across the country, leaving people and communities in dire need of help. If you're one of the many affected by these disasters, you might be wondering, what does this mean for your student loans? And can you get some relief if you're struggling to stay on top of your payments? And the answer is yes. There is a program called Natural Disaster Forbearance, and this might offer you some relief. I'm Megan, Senior Student Loan Consultant with the Student Loan Planner team, and I am here to chat about the Natural Disaster Forbearance today. Natural disaster forbearance is a temporary pause on your student loan payments if you've been impacted by a natural disaster, and it can provide you with some breathing room while you're recovering from the aftermath of a natural disaster. What a forbearance means is it's an allowable pause on your payments, but interest may still accrue. So the benefit really of a natural disaster forbearance, or a forbearance in general, is that we don't have to pay, and those non-payments aren't negatively reported on your credit report, and we're not collecting late fees or anything like that, but we are still accruing interest. So it's an allowable pause, but still accruing interest. A positive thing about this forbearance is it is actually something kind of proactive, where the Federal Loan Servicing Team checks the Federal Emergency Management Agency website at least once each business day to identify any and all impacted areas connected to a natural declaration. After a natural disaster, the loan servicing team will quickly reach out to borrowers that live in that impacted area and notify them of options available to them. This might sound familiar if you were victim to some of the fires going on in LA recently and the aftermath of hurricane flooding in Asheville and parts of North Carolina. If for some reason you don't get that message proactively, but you have been affected by a natural disaster in the area where you live or where you work, you can ask your student loan servicer for a pause or a reduction in your student loan payments. And generally that lasts for up to 90 days throughout the natural disaster forbearance. They'll go ahead and place your loans into forbearance, which will prevent payments from being due during that period. But again, remember, interest still accrues or adds to the balance, so you won't see the balance stay put. It will go up slightly as that interest accrues month to month. And you'll still be responsible for paying that interest in the future. Once that initial 90 days is over, you may ask for additional forbearance time. The servicer can grant additional forbearance time in 30-day increments, and the total forbearance just can't exceed a maximum of 12 billing cycles from the date of the disaster. For about a year, technically, you have allowed for this disaster forbearance. What's interesting is if you're working for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, or the PSLF program, and you were affected by a recent natural disaster, you also, all of this still applies. You can apply or request forbearance due to this natural disaster. But the good part, if you're working towards PSLF, is as long as you're still employed and working for an eligible employer, natural disaster forbearance is a qualifying forbearance that would count as if it was a payment towards your PSLF program and your PSLF credits, which is really great because that means that your forgiveness timeline is not going to be thrown off by this natural disaster forbearance situation. So let's do a quick recap on natural disaster forbearance information. Duration. How long can you request this? Up to 90 days at first, and then you can request an extension for up to 12 months total. Who's eligible for a natural disaster forbearance? If you've been directly impacted by a federally declared natural disaster, you could be eligible for this forbearance. This includes individuals whose homes have been damaged or you've been displaced due to things like hurricanes or wildfires or floods or tornadoes. When I'm talking about this natural disaster forbearance, I'm speaking really to those who have federal student loans, and I'm talking through the federal student loan rules. Private student loan lenders may also have some type of forbearance situation that you can request, but that will vary from lender to lender, so you'd want to chat with them about that. Things you want to know about the natural disaster forbearance. One is that interest still accrues. So it's not going to make your loan repayment cheaper. It's just going to pause payments, so you're not required to make payments during this unfortunate time. Another is impact on your credit. This forbearance due to the natural disaster should not negatively affect your credit score, which is great because it's an allowable pause on your payments. So you won't have late payments show up on your credit report. That's something that really impacts your credit score, so that's a really big positive. If you're somebody working towards PSLF, thankfully, this forbearance counts towards that PSLF timeframe. What kind of documentation might you have to provide? Well, information in regards to the disaster's impact on you specifically. So that would be just information on the FEMA disaster declaration, proof of property damage, if applicable, any evacuation orders or notices of relocation. And most servicers will allow you to submit this documentation online or by mail. What happens if you've been affected by some kind of disaster, but it's not a federally declared disaster and it's not something that you can pursue with this natural disaster forbearance? Well, there are other options. You can still apply for a regular forbearance, a hardship forbearance. Let's say we lost our job or we're between jobs or there is some stuff going on at home that needs to be taken care of. You could still apply for that deferment or forbearance. You could also consider an income-driven repayment plan, which in a lot of cases makes a lot of sense. So if you're out of a job, unemployed right now, you don't have taxable income, you can apply for an income-driven repayment plan because the payment could be as low as $0 a month off of that income that you don't have right now. So that's an option. Now, if you have private student loans, you really just have to communicate with your private servicer, your student loan company, and they do have certain types of disaster relief programs and temporary pauses on payments. It just varies from lender to lender. So in conclusion, natural disaster forbearance can be a huge help. Could also be great for PSLF folks where it does not negatively affect your PSLF timeframe as long as you're still employed at a nonprofit or at a government entity full time. So the call to action for this is if you've been impacted by a natural disaster, don't wait to reach out to your servicer to get more information about this option. Make sure to subscribe for more updates and tips on managing your student loans during difficult times or just the regular old times. And stay safe out there.